We're rolling. Hello, everybody. I'm Don Counts, and we're here in Fayetteville, Tennessee, at the Warrior Project. And Linda Williams made all these happen, and we're just talking to some veterans. And this whole building's about veterans, where their pictures are on the wall from people all around our community who served in the military. And today we're honored to have a friend of mine, a Flintvillean, Mr. Joe Pendergrass.
Right. Flintvillean is exactly right. Every time I think about going to school out at Flintville, I think, I was so lucky because I grew up where I did. And I grew up around the people that were older than me, that were smarter than me, that took me and shook me and tried to teach me how to behave. I'll never, my English teacher was Miss Margaret Jennings.
Miss Jennings, yep.
And I went to see her when she was 95 years old, when she had a birthday party over here at the Church of Christ.
Right.
And she said something to me that day, and I had totally almost forgotten it, but I never forgot it completely because it happened the very first time I was in her class when I went to high school. And I was cutting up, and I should have been paying attention. And she grabbed me by the ear, and she took me to a little clothes closet. And there was nothing in the closet except a light bulb. She put me in the closet, and she turned on the light, and she said, "I will see you after school." So she kept me in there the remainder of that day. I think I must have been in about the 1 o'clock class or something like that, just back from lunch. And so I thought about that a lot while I was in there. And when I went to her 95th birthday party, she told me, she said, "I want to tell you," she said, "You're one of the best students I ever had."
Wow. Wow.
And I had to tell her that, "And you were one of the best teachers that I ever had."
Mm.
And the more that I watch the TV and the more that I hear people talking about things, I realize how really, really, really smart my teachers were. My teachers, they was heads above. All the Lincoln County teachers were like that, though.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize it at the time,
Sure.
but they
Sure.
were.
Yeah.
I could have done anything that I wanted to in the world, but I just wasn't smart enough to pay attention. I always, when I was in school, I made good grades. I never studied. It just came natural to me. I could just pick it up and I could just do it.
Wow.
And I didn't realize how fortunate God had made it for me, but He had. And like I said, the people in my community there, I remember you never locked your doors. There was very little rebel rousing going on. We used to have some people in the community there that drank pretty heavily. And I'm going to tell you, they would absolutely stay off of the road and walk through the pastures before they would get on the road and walk in front of your house.
Yeah.
Now that's something I could name them right. I can name them right now. If they were going to Green Gables, they would walk on the other side of the road in the pasture. Sure would, just so that they wouldn't get on the road and wouldn't upset anybody,
Yeah.
And so anyway, I was glad that I came from Lincoln County, Tennessee. When I went into the Marine Corps, I had been to MTSU about 3 years, and I had always said that if I ever went in the military, I was going to be in the Marine Corps. And I had a friend of mine who lived over at Winchester. His name was Willie Wentz. We called him Willie Ears Wentz because he had big ears, and he's a heck of a nice guy, And anyway, I went into the Marines, but he never did. But anyway, the furthest I'd ever been away from home, whenever I left to go to Paris Island, was Nashville, Tennessee. I got to go to the hotel up there. Anyway, this big hotel downtown, and we had something to do with the Future Farmers of America there, and I got to go to that. And that's the only time I'd ever been to Nashville.
Wow.
I had been close. I had been to Smyrna, and I had been to Huntsville and Boaz. And when we used to go to Boaz. I had relatives who lived down there, and there was a junkyard there. And in this junkyard was a. You remember the show Baba Black Sheep?
Mm-hmm.
There was an airplane sitting there in that junkyard. And every time I would beg my daddy, I said, "Why don't you buy that from me?" And if you had it now, it would be worth probably $2 or $3 million.
Oh yeah.
But it sit there derelict for so long. I mean, it looked like it was polished and ready to go, you know. But nobody needed an airplane right then. I guess it came right out of World War II. And anyway, I always thought, man, I wish that he'd have purchased that for me. There's a fella out here that lived on top of the hill at 110 Highway there, Mr. Carl Moore. He's dead now, but he knew how much I was involved and how much enthusiasm I had for flying and this sort of thing. So he called me one day. He said, "I got some magazines. I want you to come and look and read, and you can bring them back to me." I said, "Okay." So sure enough, I went and got the magazines. I read them all. And these magazines were printed in 48, 49, and they had a place in California that you could buy a brand new P-51 Mustang with a spare engine, tip tanks for $2,500.
Wow.
And today they're anywhere between $1 and $2 million a piece.
Wow.
And what they did, they sold all they could, and then they took the rest of the aircraft and stuff like that, and they cut them up and melted them back down into aluminum and other parts.
Wow.
You know, to use. So there was a salvage guy. Finally, he had bought them. You know, but I thought that was a very interesting article. I took it back to him, and then he died a couple of years later. I don't know what happened to the magazines, but it would have been a joy to have them. I got a few laying around like that I wouldn't take money for, you know, and this sort of thing. Anyway, I will get back on the subject if I'm off the subject a little bit. Like I said, when I left here for Parris Island, the furthest I'd ever been away from home was Nashville. And so went to Parris Island and jumped off that bus. Well, I'm going to tell you first of all about going to Nashville. I had to go to Nashville, took a bus right here, right off the corner down here.
Yeah.
And I went to Nashville and got on a train, and it was about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So I got on and I got in the passenger car, which at that time was just the caboose. There was the guy that stands at the back that waves the lantern,
Yeah.
and there was one other guy on that train besides myself.
Wow.
We went all the way to Atlanta. And as far as I know, it's not like the song that Tom T. Hall had, you know, where he and the guy was drinking down the highway and the other guy went to sleep. This guy went to sleep, but as far as I know, he never said a word to me. And, you know, I was anxious to talk to somebody, but he didn't want to talk, I guess. Anyway, we got to Atlanta in the middle of the night. And at one time, and when you got to Atlanta, the train yard there where they done all the switching and stuff was kind of underground.
Oh yeah.
And so I switched trains there, and I caught a train to some little town out there, and then I got a bus. The bus carried me to Parris Island, and I got Parris Island about 6 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Pulled in there, bus started to unload. Man, there was this guy about 5'4" there, and I thought to myself, it's gonna be rough. But every time I came across a rough spot when I was in the Marine Corps, I always thought to myself, you know, I'm a volunteer, and I know I can do this because there's been millions of them that had done it before me.
Wow.
And I said I wouldn't let this bother me one iota. So I zipped right through the schooling and everything. But so I had, some real experiences there, I guess, the being away from home and everything else. I got ready to, I went through about 3 or 4 schools, and then I went to Memphis Air Station for a little bit, and we went to go to California. So I had met this guy who was an American Japanese, and his daddy was a professional gardener.
Oh.
He did gardening for these movie stars and stuff like that, but he was a high performance gambler. He loved to gamble. So anyway, whenever I flew out there, this guy's name was Ronald Takeda. When I flew to California, he met me at the airport, and he says, "Come on," he said, "we got to go down to West Covina and pick up my car." I said, "Okay." So I hopped in, we go down, and we get down to West Covina, which is just a suburb of Los Angeles there. And the first thing that struck me is when we got up there on the roads, golly, there was 6 or 7 lanes there, and everybody was doing about 120. These policemen on the highway patrol, they had the motorcycles.
Oh, yeah.
And they'd pass you doing 100 miles an hour, and it's gone, So I thought, man, this is something else. Here it is living on a dirt road.
You come a long way.
Oh, man, come a long way. So anyway, we go down there, and we get over to his brother's house, and his brother's a policeman on the Los Angeles police force. And he says, "Here, you take this Chevelle. I'm going to get that other car over there." And he said, "You drive this one. Just follow me." I said, "Man," I said, I had never been on the interstate before in my life." He said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "Just get in, buckle up." Said, "We'll be fine." So sure enough, I followed him. We climbed up on that interstate, and all of a sudden I was doing about 80. Just like this, I had the windows all rolled up. I had the radio off. I was buckled in 4 or 5 places because I was expecting the worst. And I'm not kidding. At one time, these lanes of traffic I'm talking about, they had about 8 lanes separated by some little bitty poles and a wire about 1 inch in diameter. And if something happens, it's bad business. But anyway, we got back home. But make a long story short, we went to the racetrack once out there. His daddy gave us, I think he gave us $100 a piece, and we were just losing it left and right. And then we hit a 7-to-1 odds horse and won a lot of money. And when we left the track that afternoon, I was practically broke. So that's what that'll get you. And I was never a gambler after that. I wouldn't even play cards. People ask me why you wouldn't play cards. I said, because I know I'm going to lose.
It's a lose.
It's a lose game. So anyway, but Takeda, he took after his daddy a whole lot. He continually borrowed money from me when I was around him, and he'd always pay me back. But in the end, he wound up getting me for $40.
He still owes you $40. Still owes you $40.
Still owes me $40. Yeah.
if he's watching.
Yeah, but anyway, we got over, got ready to go to Vietnam, and I went to Japan. I went to Iwakuni, and I stayed there 4 or 5 days, and then went on down to Vietnam. And first night I was there, it was like, I can tell you about it now, but for 50 years, I haven't really told any of this stuff that I'm talking about right now to anybody much. Whenever I came out of the Marine Corps, I went to work in Huntsville, and I worked on the very first moonshot. I've got a medallion that's made out of the metal that they flew to the moon and back.
Wow.
The little whatever they came back in. And everybody that worked on that got one of those, because we worked on Sundays, we worked holidays, we worked nearly 7 days a week for a year before that.
Wow.
But anyway, we were sitting there eating lunch one night, and everybody would bring a brown bag, and I was relating a story of something that happened in Vietnam. And of course, to me, I didn't care about what they did in California. I had a lot of pride in what I did and knowing who I was. You know, knowing that I had the ability to, if it was determined that my life was needed for someone else, that I was capable of doing that. That's something that you figure out pretty fast, because you know that the next guy over here and this guy over here, they feel exactly the same way.
Wow.
Whether he's black, green, Chinese, that has nothing to do with it. And all these people talk about things that they know about, younger, way younger than I am, and they don't have a clue as to really why that our country is as great as it is. It's because of people, I want to say like me, but people that have the same mindset as I do, that this country was given to us to take care of for the next generation. If we squander the ability and the capability of keeping it all together and going forward, then we have done a terrible thing, and I believe that God, one of these days, will take his hand off of this country. And I believe that with all my heart. But anyway, back to the story there, I had this guy says, we don't want to hear anything about no Vietnam. So I thought to myself, he's the same age I am, and more than likely he got some sort of deferment, which I don't hold that against him. But, you know, it wasn't his right to take those other 6 or 7 people there out of the loop, not hearing what I had to say. So I just made up my mind right then that I wouldn't talk about it again. And so for over 50 years, I didn't. I didn't talk about it with my family. I didn't talk about it with my cousins. No, I mean, I just never talked about it. None. Nobody ever asked me. That was one thing. The other thing was that probably had they asked me, I probably wouldn't have talked about it anyway. It's something about that you can never put into words. You wonder lots of times how that you were able to survive and others did not, and you think about all the people that you knew that didn't come back, that had sisters, brothers, and mothers, and daddies, and you just wonder sometimes, well, how did I skate through that? You know, I flew over 100 missions when I was in Vietnam, and these friends of mine, in 2017, I didn't know they were my friends. But I was out baling hay, and I come in for lunch, and I seen on that little machine that says, if this is Joe Pendergrass and you live in Deer Valley, Tennessee, call this number, the South Carolina number. So I told Marie about it, and time went by, 2 or 3 days, and I got it come in one afternoon. There was another call there. It said, this is Father Gann in South Carolina, and gave me the number, said, please call me if you have any information about this Joe Pendergrass. So I told Marie, because he'd already said some things that indicated to me that he had some information about me that he probably didn't need. So anyway, I waited a couple of days, and Marie, she was very apprehensive about going and going to see them and having them to get near us or whatever. But anyway, I made the call. I said, oh, well, I can always hang up. So I called, and as soon as he picked up the phone, everything that was way back here came right up here. And he started talking about missions that we were on and things that we did, and every single thing come back to me.
Wow.
every single thing. And from 1973 or so till 2018, I had not been back to the VA. I got wounded when I was in Vietnam, and I remember the first check I got, and Marie will tell you that I just always scorned it almost, because I thought, what a joke. What a joke. Because here I was ready to do, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And, but anyway, got the first check, and it just sort of aggravated me, and I said, that's it. I'm not going back to the VA. So until 2018, I didn't. But I do know that I went to Nashville, and I met this lady up there, and her last name was Cross, and she was my advocate. And first thing I knew, the VA was calling me, so you should have been here a long time ago for all this stuff, And really, that was fine, well and good, but this guy down here in South Carolina, he done turned the rock over, see? I mean, all this stuff that I had put so far back in my head, I couldn't even tell you about it. But whenever he started talking, it's like that it's just everything was fluid, And I got to where I was dreaming every night. So then I realized, I knew people had the PTSD, but I never really thought about it, because whenever I came back, I started dismissing everything, see. I didn't dwell on it. I dwelled on raising a family, making a living, and this sort of thing. But, and I know a lot of people, if they were in my shoes right here today, they would tell you the same thing, that, you can bury it, but you can't ever get rid of it. It'll go to the grave with me, and I can't help it. It's just one of those things that I wish I could. I'm way better now than I was 2 years ago, because after I went to the VA, I saw a doctor a few times, and they gave me some medication, but I figured out pretty fast that probably wasn't the thing for me to do, because I was waking up in the middle of the night with screaming terror. And I knew that I could not continue to live like that.
Right.
And not after all these, that's a long time. 50 years is a long time.
Sure.
And when you bury something that deep, you expect it to stay buried,
Yeah.
I think. But anyway, make a long story short, these guys in South Carolina, Tim Gahan, he was a Catholic priest.
Mm-hmm.
And he was my door gunner the night that I got wounded in Vietnam. And so we were going to meet in Hunts. We're going to meet here, and I told Marie, nah, that won't happen, because they close the streets off here about 8 o'clock, and we won't be able to converse or anything, and no telling what we get into, So I made arrangements for us to go to Longhorn Steakhouse in Huntsville. And he said, well, he would meet us there on Tuesday. It was February the 28th. That was the day that I got wounded. He set it up like that.
Wow.
It was a Tuesday in 1967, the night that I got wounded. We set the time for 6 o'clock. And so help me, to this day, it was raining and the ceiling was falling just like it was that night in 1967. Because I'll never forget, we went into this zone. I had been in it at least 3 times that day, because I know I picked up 14 one time, I picked up 8 or 10 another time, and I picked up 5 or 6 maybe the last time. But the last time, what happened was, every time we'd go in there, they would mortar the zone. The NVA had zeroed in on that zone, and it was just, it was hurting the guys on the ground, because when that stuff explodes, it goes somewhere. And so we thought we were finished for the day. And about 5 o'clock, they called and said, we're going to have to go again. Said they running out of ammunition. And they think if we can get them ammo there, that they can stay the night. So we all devised a plan. As a general rule, you always had two birds in a flight, and one of the aircraft was to go into the zone and make a flare. And as soon as he flared, he was going to nose over and peel out of that zone. We were coming in behind him to put the ammunition on the ground. And anyway, talking about the rain and the ceilings falling there, when we neared the zone, I saw a Huey. It was on fire, and it was peeling off to the left-hand side, going across the river. And, I mean, he was going to be able to land, but he was on fire. And I said, oh, we got some serious problems this time. And so we went in, and the first aircraft did exactly like we planned it. He did the flare, and as soon as he flared, we were right behind him. And when we flared, we had the hatch open in back, and we were pushing the ammo out the back, just like that, right to the ground. In other words, the back of the ramp was 6 feet or less from the ground.
The flare was for you to see, and you were flying the helicopter.
Yeah. So we did the flare, and then just all of a sudden, when we let over like this and started to get out of the zone, that's when they let us have it. I mean, to tell you right now, we took 29 hits going out of that zone. How it kept from hitting something that was important is beyond me. I mean, I don't know.
But it hit you. That was
it hit me, yeah. But I mean, I'm just so. None of us could figure that out really, because it sounded like you were inside a tin can. Doom, 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 doom.
Where did it hit you?
I caught around in the foot, and it came out over here with this knee. So I mean, I wasn't seriously injured, but we flew to an aid station, which was about 15 miles away, and they made me get off of the helicopter. So I didn't have much choice. I got off. But anyway, the reunion that we had, this fella, Tim, had told me that he would meet us there about 6 o'clock. So Marie I finally talked her into going. So we get down there, and he says, now when you come in, he says, look over toward the bar. He said, you'll see me. He said, I'll have on my collar. That's easy enough to figure out. So I walked in, and sure enough, I seen this fellow over there, short fellow, bald-headed like me, and he is getting a drink. And I walked over, and I put my hand out, and he's, we just, from there, we just went on. But, it's like I couldn't have picked him out in a million years. I would have never known who he was. So anyway, we go back. He says, I've made arrangements with the waitress for us to have the table in the corner so we won't be, nobody will interfere with us. We can talk and stay here as long as we want to stay. I said, that's good. So we started back toward the table, and he says, I've got to go to the bathroom. And Marie looks at me, and she says, I got to go to the bathroom too. I didn't know what her ulterior motive was at the time, but I'll tell you about that in a second. My wife she looks things over pretty close. Mm-hmm. So anyway, he goes, and when he gets to the door, the bathroom door, there's a hallway there, and it says ladies and men. And he gets to the door, and he goes, whew, right back to the bar. And I see this guy up there sitting at the bar that he was talking to, and he gets up. I said, uh-oh, Marie is right. He's going to sell me something, or he's going to do something. He's got something on his brain.
Got something.
So anyway, they come walking back through there, and this guy's casually dressed, first one thing and the other. And like I said, this was in February, so it's cool weather. But the closer he got, it's like just all of a sudden from about, far near that bench right there, he sticks his hand out. And you know what you do when somebody sticks their hand out, mm-hmm. don't you? Mm-hmm. You stick yours out.
Right.
So I did. And he said, hi, Joe. He said, I'm Gerald Lear. I said, Gerald Lear? He said, yeah. He said, you don't remember me? I said, no, sir, I don't. He said, I was your co-pilot the night you got wounded.
Wow.
He had flown all the way from Miami
Wow.
to have dinner with us.
Wow. That's very nice.
And of course, then we all sit down and ate, and Marie told Father Gann about, thinking he might be a killer or something, had an ill will, toward us.
That's right.
So from that time forward, he's always said, "I'm Jack the Ripper." That's what Marie calls him. And when he calls the house, he'll ask, how's Marie doing? So, but anyway, we've kept in touch. We didn't try to get, it's pretty late in life to try to go back and, I mean, it's nice, but you just don't want to, I don't think, myself, I don't want to do that. And so we still talk. I talk every Veterans Day, every Memorial Day, every Christmas, every 4th of July. I call them because they made an effort to look me up, and they are the only ones in 50 years.
Wow.
So I've been to one of the reunions. They had a reunion the next year in South Carolina, and Marie and I went to it, and there were maybe 20. Marie, would you say there were 20 there?
Thereabouts.
And basically everybody was just, you could remember them, but you had to really put your glasses on and think way back 50 years from what they looked like 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And this one guy, his name is Bob Rolfe, and I flew with him, ain't no telling, lots and lots and lots of times, but I'd have never recognized him in a million years.
Oh, yeah.
And he's all bent over and everything, then.
Yeah.
But, anyway, that's a story, that's a true story that is hard to beat.
Yeah.
Because, that's something that nobody can ever take away from you. You've got that forever, and I'll always have pride in the American flag, and I'll always have pride in what I did. I wouldn't bow down to anybody about that. There's so many people that lost their lives, lost their limbs, and even today, that wasn't as bad. Vietnam was nothing compared to like Afghanistan and some of those places where those guys lost eyes, and arms, and both legs, So, I mean, it was terrible. It was bad enough.
Yeah.
But in my squadron, there were 28 that were killed.
Wow.
And
Out of how many?
well, a squadron has got about, now, you have to remember that the squadron rotates.
Oh.
They always rotate in personnel in and out. So about 160.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So over the course of the Vietnam War, though, there were 28 in that squadron that got killed.
Wow.
And my roomie, we lived in a tent in Vietnam, and the Seabees built these tents, and what you did, it was up off the ground. It had sandbags around underneath it, and it had a tent roof with screen around the outside.
Yeah.
So that's where we slept. And the first night I was in Vietnam, I thought, this ain't much. But it's better than being out there in the foxhole.
Oh, that's right.
So I learned to live with that pretty quick.
Yeah.
And but anyway, this fellow's name was Vernon Parker, and he slept like there to me. And Vernon was from Pennsylvania. His mom and dad were killed whenever he was a little boy.
Oh, wow.
So it's just he and his sister. And Vernon was our office pogue. He was the guy that done the typewriting, the changing the orders, and all this kind of stuff. Every time he turned around, he wanted to get on flight status. And what they would do is, if they had a rotation there where that they didn't have somebody lined up for that, they'd pick somebody in the squadron to take that duty for maybe 2-3 weeks, or maybe a month, maybe 2 months, maybe from now on. But anyway, that's the way it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the door gunners. So anyway, Vernon, he kept on and on and on and on. And finally, in October of 1966, he he got on flight status. And he was tickled to death.
Oh.
I mean, he was fine. He had been on flight status for approximately 2.5 weeks, and he got killed. And every time I think about Vernon, I think about his sister. I wish now that time has passed, I wished I had went and looked her up, but it's too late now for me to do anything. But you know, I could at least told her about him.
Yeah.
He was a heck of a nice guy,
Mm-hmm.
a little skinny fella, and just full of life. And he had there were 9 of us lived in this tent,
Oh.
but he had a up-to-date stereo set. For the time, it was great. Boom, it was a forerunner of the boombox.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and he was a creature of habit. We took baths when we could get them. Our bathing situation was a tip tank off an airplane, set up on top of some sort of a eye implement, or raised up with a chain,
Mm-hmm.
and you get under it, and it's not warm. It's just cold as ice. But anyway, that was our showers, and you might get one today, and you might not get one for 4 or 5 days. But the nice thing about where I lived when I was in Vietnam is I lived about a little bit further from here over to Joe and Dix's office from South China Sea.
Oh wow.
Yes, it was nice. Beautiful beach. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And there, you come away from the beach, you go into the housing we had, and then you go right to the airstrip. And then just the other side of the airstrip, there was a road, and the Seabees lived there, and anything outside of that was Indian country.
Oh.
So, you know, that was just the way that it was. When I first went over there, I put some of the very first telephone poles that they were running a hard line for the airport at Da Nang. I put some of the very first telephone poles on top of that mountain up there.
Oh.
Yeah, and I'm sure they probably still standing.
Probably still there. That's right.
But anyway, Vernon, he was a creature of habit, and every time he took a shower, you could tell. I mean, he put everything right together, you know. Here, this is here, and this is here. He would turn his music on, and then he would click it off. And then he would go take his shower. He'd walk out of the tent, and he had the towel wrapped around him. He'd go take his shower, come back. As soon as he got back in, the first thing he did is he opened that boom box, he flipped the music on, and we all enjoyed it, you know. So what we decided one night was what we would do is, he was deathly afraid of rats. And over there was an overabundance of those things.
Man.
I mean, they were everywhere.
Oh man.
Anyway, we devised a plan. What we did is we had one, it looked like a 60-watt light bulb. That was our light. But anyway, we had one light in there. And so what we did is we took a string. This was hanging on the wall, this little boom box he had. So we took a sock and tied on a string. And then we took the string and ran it up close to the ceiling of the tent and ran it to the other side, and this fellow on the other end down there, he would pull it. We tried it 2 or 3 times. It worked like a charm, you know. Fell right off. So anyway, we were waiting on Vernon to come back in. So here comes Vernon, and he comes back in, and sure enough, true to form, I mean, right down to a T. He goes right straight to the boom box, opens it up, checks it on, the music starts, and then he takes his towel off and he reaches down to get his underwear. And about the time that he reached down to get his underwear, we pulled, this guy down the other end, pulled the string. And the sock fell off, and I hollered, "Rat!" And he shifted gears, and those underwear were shredded. And he left the premises there. We all had such a laugh. He never got over that at all. But, that was so funny.
Oh man.
So funny. But anyway, it's just one of those stories, you know. I think everybody that, you know, regardless, you hear all this kind of stuff about, well, you know, that was a poor boys' war and all this stuff. Nah, it's a bunch of bull.
Mm-hmm.
I know lots of guys that had rich parents and rich, well-to-do, you know. They weren't there for the fun of it. They gave their all to be there. They wanted to be there. And, you can't take anything, you can try, but you can never take it away from them. And I think that they made a huge mistake whenever, our folks, they just didn't tell it like it was.
Oh, yeah.
I got very few letters from home, I'll be honest with you, and you would think I would have, but I didn't get any letters from my brother, none of my brothers. My mother, she mailed me a letter every once in a while, but she was a soldier's wife when my daddy was in World War II. So, I didn't fall out with them because I thought, I'm so busy anyway, I probably wouldn't have time to read it. So anyway, I didn't get too upset about that. I had one cousin that wrote me pretty consistently, and Linda Simmons, that lives out at Flintville, and I appreciated that. But you would think, as many cousins and stuff as I have, that I'd had mail
Every day.
every day. But I just didn't have mail. And so, back here, what I didn't realize was everybody was getting their information at 6 o'clock every night on the news. And it wasn't the right information.
False news even back then.
Absolutely. I mean, if they had known what was going on, then it probably wouldn't have lasted as long as it did.
Wow.
Because they made a mistake in trying to do something that they should have known better. But that's the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But those guys that lost their lives, that 58,000 something people that lost their life over there, can't take not one thing away from them for serving their country and doing what they did and giving their life for their country. Because all of them, if they were alive today, would tell you flat out, I'm always going to be honoring that flag. I'm always going to honor Americans. I'm going to always be privileged that I have to live in this country is something that nobody can take away from me. People here have no idea sometimes. They've never been to a lot of these other countries. They have no idea what's going on in the other places.
Right.
And I tell Marie all the time, they just don't. You hear people talking and making noise, and everybody believes. I don't know how they can soak it up and take it up when it's not the truth.
Right.
But that's life.
That's true.
I hate the way things are now. I am so disappointed in things. I know that a lot of people was in World War II now. I've got a veteran buddy. He turned 97 the day after D-Day. I called him 2 days before D-Day, and I talked to him because I knew his birthday was coming up, and I also knew he was over there D-Day. And he was 97 just a few days ago. And I always appreciate talking to him. He and I can't talk very long. We just, I think the older you get, the more emotional that you get. So it's probably just as well that we didn't talk about it, So
Right.
Anyway.
Well, you talked about the amount of people that died. If you've seen the Vietnam Wall in Washington, that's a lot of people died. And then you also have a memorial here in Fayetteville.
Yes.
You might tell everybody where that's at.
Well, that's right on the side of the Thornton Taylor bypass. I'm in the Marine Corps League, and we had about a dozen or so of us. I got the original charter. I'm one of the members there of the original deal. Mr. Howard Lee, Gunny Thompson, Fred Hoffman, let's see who's some of the others. Myself, Hurley McAllister. Hurley and I became members the same night. Make a long story short, we were trying to get a place to put stuff and to build a memorial, to start something like that after the Marine Corps League had been established a little while. The first thing that we did after we got our charter is we put the trees out on the bypass over there. They gave me, let's see here, $500, And I went to Shadow Nursery and I bought all the pear trees that I could buy for $500. And then we all planted them. And of course, it just aggravates the stew out of me when I go by there and see those mowers, the way they've scabbed them up.
Oh, yeah.
I told the guys a while back, I said, we're going to have to get out there with the tar and tar them or the insects will eat them up.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was our first project. And after that, we've met everywhere in town. We're like a stepchild, you know what I mean?
I know.
Can't find a place of our own. The guys, they talk about getting a place of our own, but like I told them, I said, we're a very small organization, and it's not getting the stuff that's the holdup.
Right.
It's taking care of it, utilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, we just don't do that because we never have been an organization that actually pushed. We have one thing a year, and that was all. And we missed the last 2 years because of the COVID thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were looking for a place we got a hold of these cannons, but we didn't have a place to put them.
Oh.
So Colonel Lee talked to Billy Bob Carter.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked out a deal with the state where we could rent or lease that little piece that we got over there for like $15, $1 a year for 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
And I just re-upped the lease here about a month ago.
Good.
So anyway, we're set to go for another 15.
You have 2 cannons there, and
We
what
have
else?
2 cannons, and we also have a big monument there. Okay. And what it's there, it says that, it's for all the present Marines, former Marines that served. And everybody that's been in the league, though, over there except one, has got a rock over there with that. And you can see the names of it and when they served and this sort of thing. We had a fellow that one of our members' son was with in Afghanistan, and he was killed in Afghanistan. And he asked us, he said the boy didn't have any family. And he asked us if it would be okay with us if we put a rock down there for him. So we did.
Oh.
And, we're proud to be able to do that. But anyway, Mr. Billy Bob, he got us fixed up with that over there. And then, make a long story short, we drew up the plans to put the cannons up there and everything else. And we have every Memorial Day, we have a service there. Doesn't last long. And Linda will tell you she's been there several times. Doesn't last long, but it usually does the trick. Yeah. And so, anyway.
How long were you in the Marines?
Actually, 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah. And 1965 to last part of 1971. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, I don't regret it. Not a bit.
We appreciate your service, and I think I know you've got thousands of stories, and you told some great ones here. And we the public don't really know the real story, but it's good.
And it's just because that people just really don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Especially folks in my generation, they just soon forget about it. Yeah. Not that they're not prideful now.
Right.
They're proud of it, and they're proud they served. I don't believe you could find a veteran that served in Vietnam and say he wasn't proud of it.
Right.
I mean, you can look, but I don't think you'll find one. And I know I wouldn't myself. Right. That's something that nobody can take away from me.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're proud of you. I'm proud you're a Flintvillean.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much.
I hope it wasn't too long.
No, it was great. We appreciate. We've had Joe Pendergrass here today, a Vietnam veteran and Flintvillean, and we appreciate you telling us your stories.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
We appreciate Linda Williams for helping us here, making this happen here at the Warrior Project.
They've done a great job right here. This is so incredible. Yes. People, if you haven't been out to this building here and looked at this display, you need to come tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Bring your kids. Bring your little kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for watching, and I'm Don Counts. We'll see you next time.